Hi guys, it's Obley here. Today I'm going to be bringing you 5 tips to help boost your Breath of Sindragosa gameplay and dive into what makes the spec so strong compared to the other builds available for Death Knight at the moment. This video will focus on mainly the nuances around Breath, just the Breath talent only, so stay tuned for more deep dive videos on things like the hero talents and other specs. So let's hop right in. Number 1, make sure that you are geared to complement the spec. As silly as it sounds, to fully utilise the damage profile of Breath, you want to make sure your gear is fully suited to do just that. We want high crit and high mastery, as crit contributes to making sure our damage inside and outside of Breath still stays high, and mastery just further bolsters your hard hitting Frost abilities. With crit increasing killing machine procs and making obliterate then do frost damage as well, mastery will directly increase the damage that this does, which makes it a very important stat to have. After this, you want to make sure that you have a strong on-use trinket with either a mastery buff or a strength buff, with good examples of this being a Mark of Kadros or the Treacherous Transmitter if you don't mind playing the minigame. The damage profile of Breath being very bursty makes trinkets like these a must-have. An honourable mention goes out to the set bonus as well, being heavily built for Breath, increasing the damage of runic power spenders much like Breath, and allowing Breath to have a chance at increasing your strength as well, so this is a must send as soon as possible when playing this build. Tip number 2 is plan ahead. This one is super important, as being adaptive to what might be coming next can either propel your damage or it can waste it. For example, you want to make sure that if all of your CDs are up and ready to go, but adds might be spawning, or there's maybe an increased damage phase in the next 20 seconds or so, maybe just holding on to them and just pressing like Remorseless Winter instead might be your best bet. Keeping an eye on boss timers or knowing what pack might be coming next in a dungeon could really help you get the most out of your Breath, or prevent you from just dropping the buff altogether if a mechanic might force you away from the target. This can become a really important skill for progression raiding, as you can learn the fight off the back of your hand, which can then lead you to using anti-magic shells to increase your runic power gain. So this in theory would be a tip in its own right, so tip 2.5. AMS can help you soak magic damage for extra runic power. Always be on the lookout for what you could soak with AMS in order to get anywhere between 1 global's worth of runic power to an entire bar, but be careful because soaking too much might kill you. Tip 3 would be to make sure that you align every CD and trinket that you can together. Since the tier began, I've been an avid believer of sending Empower Rune Weapon at the start with all of your cooldowns, because you want to make sure that it's the strongest point of your burst is fully compensated with everything that you can offer it. Think of it this way. You don't really care about your Breath of Sindragosa lasting for 5 more seconds when all of your cooldowns are down. Use it just doing its natural damage compared to peppering your target with killing machine procs during pillar at the same time as breathing. Sending everything at the start will guarantee that you see a strong burst no matter what, rather than an elongated, weak breath during the end of your damage cycle. This is especially prevalent when adds are available, as you are spending a lot more runes placing Death and Decay down and cleaving obliterates onto enemies while breathing. An honourable mention here would be to make sure that you press all of the buttons on the GCD that can be done outside of your burst window before initiating Breath and Burst, such as A-Bomb Limb, Death and Decay, Remorseless Winter, as you don't want to waste valuable GCDs pressing these inside of your burst. You just want to be spamming Obliterate as much as possible. Tip number 4 is to be careful pressing those shiny buttons. Not all procs are created equal. With this spec, it's really important to be on top of resource management and know what buttons will lead to you dropping Breath and which ones will lead to you gaining those few extra seconds without making the rest of your gameplay suffer. To properly go into what I mean here, if you're dipping below 60 runic power, you need to make sure that the next button is planned out. Pressing a Rhyme proc here may lead you to lose your Breath afterwards if you can't consistently spam Obliterate. A general tip here is that if you're breathing and your runic power is under 60, you are not safe to press anything else other than Obliterate, unless you have Horn of Winter at your disposal. I like to keep my horn as sort of like an enabling button, and what this means is that if I'm in a position where I want to press Remorseless Winter to maybe regain my 10 stack Gathering Storm, or if my Frost Fever is about to drop off and I have a Rhyme proc at the ready to reapply it, pressing Horn first will guarantee that free button afterwards, because it's not only going to give me a bit of extra runic power, but also 2 runes to allow me to Obliterate afterwards too, which could lead into a chain reaction of just having my Breath for a lot longer. Having some practice with the spec will eventually give you more of a feel of what might be a dangerous button to press next and what won't be. So the bottom line here is just to remember that if you're under 60 runic power, just spam Obliterate. Once you get over that to about 60-70, you can afford to press a shiny Rhyme proc or Remorseless Winter. But don't be disheartened, because you do need to just remember that RNG has a large effect here with this spec. You might just not get any frigid executioner procs and therefore just have to wave goodbye to your Breath after only 25 seconds or so. Tip number 5 is make sure the right target is your main target, because breath is a high priority nuker. If there is a target that needs to die first or is taking additional damage, you want this to be your main target, because breath deals reduced damage to anything else in that cone that isn't your primary target. Just on the topic of main targeting, switching targets a lot can have a negative impact on your damage, as targets with a full 5 stacks of Razor Eyes take 15% increased damage from frost damage, and that's exactly what Breath of Sindragosa is. One last free tip for my Frost homies, no matter what spec you're playing, is track your buffs. Track as much as you can without cluttering your screen, as it's important to make sure that you're prepping for breath in order to make it as strong as possible for the next time round. For example, tracking Bone Grinder can lead to making sure that you have a high stat going into it and receive that 20% frost damage increase right from the get-go while all your buffs are rolling. More important buffs to track would be things like Icy Talons, Unleashed Frenzy, but by tracking Icy Talons you do also kind of track Unleashed Frenzy. Making sure to keep Icy Talons at 5 stacks while you go into breath means that you don't have to leave breath to naturally buff itself during your burst and just waste some time of not being as strong as it possibly could be. Getting into the habit of tracking your buffs can allow you to properly decide what the next button to press will be and take full advantage of any buffs that might be rolling. So for example, if you've got 1 second of Unholy Strength from our weapon enchant rolling, you can either do Obliterate or Remorseless Winter. It'd be way more beneficial to Obliterate, because that entire hit will be buffed by it, as opposed to Remorseless Winter, where the only part that will be buffed would be the first weak tick. Alright, and that is my 5 quick tips on how to improve your Breath of Sindragosa gameplay. Feel free to visit me on Twitch or look at my coaching services over on Metafy. Thanks very much guys, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye!